Welcome to the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, where we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy, such as the Deferred Sales Trust, is the best way for you to exit your business or real estate tax deferred. I'm your host, Brett Swartz, and each episode I am joined by some of the best real estate, financial, wealth, and business minds in the world, where they share their ideas, deal stories, and inspiration. So together we can make complex tax deferral strategies simple and passive income plans achievable. Hey, I'm excited about our next guest. He is all about helping you to become more fearless and an investor who can create and preserve more wealth through Airbnb real estate investing. In fact, he has a really diverse background. He was once a TV sports anchor. He ran a sports video company, recruiting business. That word is a little hard. And he was also in the health and wellness sector, fundraising for K through 12 and a few other sales jobs. And he is excited to talk to us more about becoming more of a fearless investor. Please welcome to the show with me, Kyle Stanley. Kyle, how you doing, sir?
I'm good. Thanks, Brett. Excited to be on the show.
Excellent. I kind of didn't do a very good job of that intro. I butchered that word there. So would you give our listeners a little more about your background and current focus?
Yeah, videography. That's a tough word, right? Well, background, yeah, just kind of like what you heard there. I have done pretty much everything under the sun. I was a entrepreneur, you could call it, for about, close to 10 years. And then truly found like the vehicle that was going to bring me financial freedom in the form of real estate. And then that just basically staying on the same highway, but driving in a different lane. It became Airbnb more so than even like flipping and long-term holds. And when I just found the Airbnb model, I ran with it. And yeah, I mean, basically just long story short, we went from 0 to 25 Airbnbs in under 18 months and netting over $20,000 a month as a business.
That is phenomenal. And I got to learn more about this because I'm the old school buy multifamily, buying to syndications, passive or active sometimes, but cash flow can be, 5, 7, if you're really lucky, 8 or 9 or 10%, depending on the deal. But long term. And so I'm excited to dive in this, Cal. But before we go there, I believe we've all been given certain gifts in this life. Some people call them superpowers. Some people call them strengths. So I want you to go back to your college days, your high school days, maybe even your elementary school days. And what do you believe maybe the gifts that you were given? What are one or two strengths maybe that you have? And how do those gifts or strengths help how you help people today?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know that I was blessed with anything, right? When we come out of the womb, we're all pretty much fresh, but we develop these things probably mostly from our parents in the beginning, and communication was like number one. I remember when I was like 4 years old, my parents taught me to get on the phone. And if the phone rang, these are landlines, not cell phones, obviously. When the phone rang, you answer the phone. Hello, Stanley residence. This is Kyle. And like, that was kind of like the number one thing that we always answered the phone with. And so for me, communication was instilled in me at a very young age. And I would say that also probably made me a little bit more of an older soul because I just was taught to grow up a lot faster and present myself a lot more professionally, even just within the household. And those are things that, being articulate, communicating, setting clear expectations, I think help both the teammates that I work with. And then of course, when I teach people the Airbnb model and educate people, that probably comes in handy a lot for the people I'm teaching.
Excellent. Love that. So communication, maturing, answering the phones, presenting yourself well. Your parents taught you well. Good parents. Love that. Yeah. Before your success as a Airbnb, real estate coach, take us to the moment when you became obsessed with Airbnb rentals.
Obsessed. So let me give you a little bit of a backstory. I was dabbling in Airbnb from 2015 to the beginning of 2019. When I say dabbling, I was just doing it as a room out of my house, house hacking. And it was April of 2019 when I heard a podcast that I was like, oh my gosh, what have I been sitting on? I've been literally like sitting on this glacier where I've only seen 10% of it, and the rest of the 90% has been under the water, and I just didn't even know it was there. And it was in the form of rental arbitrage, which is just a fancy term for doing Airbnb in homes that you don't own. And basically I learned from this podcast and from this course that you can go out and you can rent from landlords and then with their permission sublease it on Airbnb and keep the difference. So for example, rent it out for $1,500, you have about $500 of expenses, rent it out on Airbnb, $3,000, you're netting $1,000 a month for a place that you have basically no risk because you don't own. You don't have any of the headaches of the roof and the plumbing and any of that. That's all on the owner. And I'm basically a mediary of just connecting a home to a short-term guest, and I can make a huge profit in the meantime. So I heard that, got obsessed with it, and flew from there.
Okay, so I'll make sure I gather that because you're blowing my mind too right now. So okay, so 2019, you're doing your house. By the way, I've done that too, right? I love it because I'd go on vacation and be like, hey, you're eating for free, babe, because someone's renting our house. And we're in Roseville, California. And people were paying like $2,500 to rent our house for like a week or whatever. And we would go to like Lake Tahoe and we'd get something for like $1,800. And we're like, huh, well, we're making a little arbitrage there. Which is pretty sweet, right? Yeah. Now you're taking this to the next level and you're saying, hey, how about this? I'm not even going to go buy that rental. I'm just going to go lease it. I'm going to go rent it from the person for $1,500. And then I'm going to run a business. Obviously, you've got to get their permission to do that. We'll talk about here in a minute how you do that. And I'm going to start churning and burning $3,000 a month. No risk as far as ownership, no loan, no debt. You know, the roof or the water heater breaks, AC goes out. Hey, that's the owner of the property.
Yeah.
Fair summary so far?
Yeah, you're dead on.
Okay, so first question is, Kyle, why don't I just do this myself? You're going to come in and run a business out of my place. Like, these owners that you're working with, walk us through how you're structuring the deal so that they actually say yes to this.
Yeah, well, I mean, you go in with the mindset of a couple things. Number one, you're going to get more no's than yeses. So that is a very viable option that might happen, Brett. But here's the thing is that most of the people that I'm going to, if you think about landlords, most of them are not real estate, quote unquote, investors in the sense of like, this is my full-time thing. I'm a real estate investor. Most of them are, hey, I'm a lawyer. I'm a doctor. I'm a nurse. I'm someone who maybe owns anywhere between 1 to 10 houses, but I have this full-time job on the side. And so I'd much rather have convenience and stability rather than having to, basically run a hotel also while being at work. So that's part of the reason. But the other part, the way of which I just really propose this is I just try to hit all the pain points that these landlords usually go through and show them how I'm going to be a solution. For example, don't you hate it when your tenants call you at 11 p.m. at night and talk to you about how the water is no longer hot, the hot water heater is out, and you've got to deal with that either right then and there, or now you got to go to sleep and think about it and know that that's the first thing you're doing tomorrow morning. Oh, by the way, you're only making $200, $300 a month. Is that really worth your time? For me, you can almost look at me like I'm your manager, and I'm going to go in there and I'm going to deal with those issues myself. And of course, if it is something like a hot water heater, I'm going to bill you for that. But if it's something just as simple as even like a loose doorknob that needs to be tightened, I'm not going to bill you for that. Like, that's going to be something that I take on as a business expense. So I'm going to be your best tenant because literally you're not going to hear from me unless you absolutely need to hear from me.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? So essentially, these are folks who have the rentals. Maybe they're definitely passive, or they're connected with their day jobs or whatever else they're doing. They're not in the business of really actively growing their real estate portfolios or managing. And you're saying, hey, your pain points of what you even have right now that are kind of annoying, let me just take that off. The tenant stuff is all going to be me. Now, if something major comes up, we'll bill you for that. But minor stuff I'll take care of. And hey, $1,500 per month sound good to you? Is that a fair summary, Kyle?
Yeah, exactly. And the great thing is, because I have a nice spread, is if someone, I meet with a landlord and they say, it's between you and someone else and they got a great credit background and, they have great references and this is the route that we really are feeling okay with. You're new, you're different. It's kind of a little bit scary. That's kind of where they're coming from. They haven't experienced someone like me before. So what I'll say is no problem. They're going to pay you $1,500. I'll pay you $1,600. And that usually will be like, if they're on the bubble, that extra $100 makes all the difference.
Perfect. Right. So they're getting a little more juice there. They're getting someone who's very professional, right? Who's very articulate, who's building a relationship, who maybe has a track record with some properties down the street where you can talk with other owners in the area, right? So maybe the first one's the hardest, Kyle, right? But as you get the model going and as you're in the business, it probably gets some more momentum. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, it really is. I would say arbitrage is a great way to start. For me, what I teach, it's not the place that you want to be though for your entire Airbnb career. So I'll just kind of share with you my progression. My very first Airbnb, when I found out about arbitrage, was an arbitrage. As soon as I saw that model work, I went and used my real estate knowledge to buy deals and get some that I own. But then as it was funny, Brett, like in the beginning, I just really was kind of like, I had this like golden goose and I didn't want to share it. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like all these real estate investors that have been doing this for 30 years and they're bragging about $200, $300 per door. Meanwhile, I'm over here making $1,000, $1,200, $1,500 a door. Like, I don't want them to know about that because it's going to create all of this saturation. That was the first thing that came to mind. Well, then I started hearing from a buddy of mine about an abundance mindset and just giving without expecting anything in return and how it will come back to you tenfold. And it just felt like every time at these meetup groups that he was saying this, he was like directly looking at me. That's the way that it felt, of course. And so I just started sharing, and this crazy thing happened where I realized there's another model of Airbnb that you can do without owning the house, and it's property management. And so I've gone from basically having 0 to, like I said, 25. We're about to be at about the 28, 29 number here in the next few weeks. And about 70% of them are now ones that I manage for other landlords. And they still, even though, and here's the wonderful thing from my end, $0 invested in the deal. They actually pay me for the setup. So I have an infinite return on my money because I have $0 invested. I have no risk. I can cancel. They can cancel at any time. But I'm making close between $700 to sometimes $1,200 per door. And they're making about 3 to 4 times what they would usually make for having a regular rental. They're making between $600 to $800 a door. It's a win-win. Yeah.
Pause there, because again, you're blowing my mind again, which I love. I love. This is the beauty of the podcast, learning more for everybody. So I'm hearing about this scenario for the first time, and I've been real estate all my life, right? Dad, mom, rentals, development, real estate, Marcus and Millichap, brokerage, all that stuff, multifamily stuff. Now, my mom has a rental, right? And it's a good location, and it's good walkability. It's in a great school system and neighborhood. It's in Rockland, California, if you're curious. It's ranked really high.
Nice.
And sometimes she has some tenants that are like, and the rents are kind of like, So something like that. And I think her place is renting for around $1,900. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It's a house I grew up in for most of my life. And so something like that, kind of break us down the metrics. Let's apply this right now, because if anything, I'm going to call my mom, like, Mom, call Kyle. Let's get him managing that, running the Airbnbs out of it. Would that be a potential fit?
Well, yeah, it's anything to be a potential fit. From what I've found, more places work with Airbnb than don't work with Airbnb. Here's my number one piece of advice there is make sure you call your city and ask them what their short-term rental regulations are. And you're really looking for something pretty major there, which is there at least a business license or a permit in place that's needed? I would suggest those types of places because, for example, we've got a place here in Central California, Kingsburg, which is only about 30 minutes from me. And they didn't have any permits in place. They didn't need that from any of their short-term rentals. And then one day they just said, oh, by the way, short-term rentals no longer allowed at all. And so all these people that had 3, 4, 5 homes in Kingsburg that were making, call it $1,000 a month, that income's gone. And again, maybe they've taken on all the risk of owning the home, and now they're back to either making no money or making only a couple $100s per door. That's a bummer. So when you have a permit or a business license in place, that's basically the city saying, hey, we are okay with what you're doing, and we just want to profit with you. And so when they are profiting with you, most of the time, they're not going to shut it down. So that would be the first thing I find out is there anything like that? Or is at least any plan of that happening? My location in Fresno, There was nothing like that. But when I started, they were already talking about putting those in place. Now those are in place. And so I would definitely say that's the number one thing. From there, it's just about diving into the data.
So let's dive into the data, because that makes it pretty straightforward. Just call the city. Is there a business license or permit required? Okay, great. Go get that. Step 2 is what?
Step 2 is figuring out what you could make. Just like if you're going to go look at the ARV on a house on flipping and figuring out, hey, if I buy this house at this price and then put this much money into it and then try to resell it for this amount, how much money am I going to make? You can do that same thing with Airbnb. 2 different resources I would use. Number 1, it's absolutely free on our website, fearlesskyle.com. Right there on the homepage, you can find our Airbnb profit calculator. You just plug in the numbers and it'll spit out what you think or what you should be making at the end of the month. And then number 2, in order to figure out how to get to those numbers, especially on the profit side, I would use a site called AirDNA. AirDNA is just a very simple way of being able to look at basically the MLS of Airbnb. If you have called a 3-2 in Rockland, and it's in, it's on 123 Main Street, you could look at what else is on Main Street that's a 3-2 that is on Airbnb, and how much did it make in this last year, and how much is it making per night? What's its occupancy rate? And you could literally say, okay, I just need my place to look like this one and provide a great customer service and a hotel type of experience, and I should be able to make exactly what this one is making. And again, it's just basically like the MLS of Airbnb.
That is beautiful. Wow. Yeah. So go to fearlesskyle.com and look at the Airbnb profit calculator. I'm going to do that right after the show. And then second, cool. airdna.com to find out what the comps are, right? What things are going for. Okay, so that's step number 2. And now, okay, so let's say we go on there and let's say it's 150 a night, right? Mm-hmm. And let's step 3 is actually, dissecting those numbers, right? We're saying, okay, average nights per week that you can rent it. Maybe it's 3 or 4. I don't know what the number might be, right? Mm-hmm. Per week times X equals, Y, the profit of managing that, doing that. And now that's my net. Is that a fair summary there?
Yeah. And that's really what the calculator is going to do for you, Brett. So, I mean, let's just say, for example, if you go and you see, oh, hey, most of the houses in this area, according to AirDNA, are getting $150 a night and are 75% booked. You could literally just plug those numbers into the calculator and then plug in your expenses, cleaning, your utilities, your pest control, your landscaping, your mortgage/rent. And right there, it'll spit out not only what you're going to make after each month, but if you put in your initial expenses too, how much the furniture costs, how much the amenities cost, maybe the security deposit or down payment on the home. It'll show you your ROI on a yearly basis too.
Amazing. Biggest false belief, especially for my mom, she's older, right? And she's had the property and she's been in the business for 30 plus years, right? Ownership and rentals and all that stuff. Help us. How do we help the older generation, right? Get over the false beliefs of this.
So just strictly the older generation is what you're asking?
It can be anybody really, but my heart's for my mom right now, because I just know the challenges that these rentals can, people not paying and having to evict and only making a certain spread over the mortgage and, just a lot of that. So if we can help folks that are on single income sources and producing those retirement, right? That's like my mom anyway. So.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, Brett, the only thing I do, because I get a lot of landlords that come to me and say, is Airbnb really better than a regular rental? You got to pay for the furniture and you got to do this and there's so much turnover. What if they trash your house? And there's so many objections, right? The biggest thing I would say is it's twofold. Number 1, if you're scared about the type of person, realize that this person is being rated just like you. So if I'm being rated on a scale of 1 to 5 as a host, and I want to continue to host people, then I'm going to give the best customer service possible. If I'm a guest that's going to your house and I want to be able to be allowed into other houses, then I want to treat your house very, very well so that I can get invited into other houses. Now, there's exceptions, obviously, people who just make a fake account and come in for one night and decide to have a party. That's where you have to have really strict pre-screening rules, of which I teach in my course on how to do that. And for that, I can tell you, just to compare, year 1 in the business, we only had 5 properties and we made about 30 claims on Airbnb, insurance claims from damages to theft to parties to cleaning, all that kind of stuff. In year 2, averaging over 20 properties throughout the year, we might have made a total of 10 claims because we just got really airtight with our pre-screening. But at the end of the day, man, like I would say just showing people the numbers and letting the numbers speak for themselves. Like, holy cow, I'm only making $200 a month and I've got all these headaches versus, hey, I could make $1,500 a month and not have to worry about evictions, not having to worry about people paying on time. Airbnb takes care of all that stuff for you. They direct deposit it right there for you. So is there going to be a few more turning, things turning over and, moving parts? Yeah, there is. But is an extra $1,300, $1,500 worth it for you? If it is, they got to make that decision for themselves.
Very well said. Yeah, I think of the ROA, return on your equity, right? And then ROT, return on your time. And looking at what that is, right? We do that all the time with the Deferred Sales Trust, with the 1031 exchange and properties to sell or not to sell, and new depreciation schedules, and just basically mapping out those things that you may not be seeing, right? Putting them on paper, doing some simple steps there with what you gave us with the calculator on your website and the airdna.com. And now you can start moving forward. So I absolutely love it, love it, love it. What is the best way for people, or maybe the next step after that is just actually taking action, right? I would imagine, right? You get the data, you have the property, you have the plan, but now taking action, I think that's where people might get held up, Kyle. And I found that if you hire a coach who's a guide, who's been there before you, right? Who can encourage you, tell you the pitfalls to walk away from or to be careful of, and to basically, help you do this first few or maybe the next 10. Kyle, was that something that you offer, and talk about what that looks like?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I do. So I have a course called the Airbnb Kickstart course. People can download it, and then they will be a part of our Facebook group, our group coaching, for a 1-month free trial, just to be able to see like, hey, this is the type of hand holding and one-on-one, well, not one-on-one, but group coaching that I'm going to get to be able to get continued education. And most people end up staying in the group because we just add so much value, and we're talking about new strategies and everything. But you're right on. I mean, Brett, that's exactly where I started. I bought literally at the time, because it was not a popular thing and no one knew about it. The course cost me like $50, and it's turned into a 6-figure, almost completely passive business. Like now today, like our course, just full transparency, is $997. $1,000 course could possibly create for you a 6-figure business. Like, let's talk about that compared to college, right? Like I went to college, spent $120,000 and came out of college with a $20,000 a year job. That's like a 18% ROI. That's not good. So for me, like, that's just the biggest thing is if I could go back and tell myself again, like what to do when I was starting as an entrepreneur, it would be to either get a course, buy a book, or get a mentor. And I think that's the best place to start. So yeah, you want to get started, all you got to do, fearlesskyle.com. There's the course, and it'll teach you how to build an Airbnb business. Amazing. You ready for the lightning round? Let's do it. All right. Knowing what you know now, what's the one golden nugget that you would tell yourself, besides maybe the one you just said a second ago, to your 25-year-old self? Okay. Well, since I already said get a mentor, then I will say, I just actually talked about this on my podcast. Do not diversify until you have mastered one thing. You'll have to excuse me. My dogs are barking in the background. But basically what I mean by that is I got shiny object syndrome on a lot of things, and it held me back from laser focusing on the one main thing that would really, put food on the table at night. And because of that, I think I became the jack of all trades rather than the master of one. I would do that, and then I would diversify and look at other skills. So well said. That's exactly how I started my career at Marcus & Millichap. I was laser focused on helping people create and preserve more wealth in investment real estate and multifamily for 5 years. That's it. I mean, 60, 70-hour weeks, just, learning it, becoming a master, getting this 10,000 hours out of the way, right? And then you go, okay, now capital gains tax deferral, although it was kind of, put in there a little bit, during that journey. And then now investing and so, yeah, I couldn't agree more with that on that one. Next question is, what's the biggest frustration when it comes to capital gains tax deferral as it pertains to different options for selling your real estate or doing deals? What comes to mind? Well, I just had a situation where, and this is my own fault, but I had the first investment home that I bought. I was actually just selling the other day, and just from not knowing about business tax deferrals, especially in the state of California, I ended up getting hit with about $9,000 of taxes, which literally cut my profits on that property at about 50%. So, like honestly, you and I were having a conversation just the other day, and I was thinking to myself, like, oh my gosh, I wish I would have met Brett like literally 4 weeks ago, and I could have avoided this. I could have saved $9,000 literally just by having a conversation with you. So, yeah, especially in the state of California, I just think there's a lot of things that you got to know about when it comes to selling and buying real estate, because Uncle Sam wants to get a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that plug. Yeah, and if you want to learn more about the options for you for a primary home, investment real estate, business, cryptocurrency, stock, you can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. Next question is this. What's the biggest challenge you're facing right now?
Biggest challenge I'm facing? That is a good question. You know, I would say we're growing. We're starting a new division of what I'm doing in Arizona, and I would say that's the biggest challenge in a good way. Like doing this from afar and partnering with someone who really has never done Airbnb or real estate, and being 50-50 partners and trying to teach this to him from afar and being there every once in a while. That's a new challenge for me. Usually this has been in my backyard. You can go to houses, literally in 15 minutes. Now I got to have him as my eyes. And that is a new challenge. It's a fun challenge though. We've been able to tackle it pretty well. I think the word challenge sometimes can be met negatively, but this is definitely a good challenge.
Excellent. What are the biggest mistakes you see people making who are getting into the Airbnb rental business?
They think that you have to have a vacation area. I'm in Fresno, California. Believe me, no one is vacationing in Fresno, California. You do not always have to be in a vacation area. There still needs to be some reason for demand. Like for us, we have businesses and families coming into town, and a lot of people use it as a 1 or 2 night kind of port between going to LA or San Francisco or the national parks. So it has to be a reason that people want to come here, but it doesn't have to be for vacations.
So well said. And that's exactly right. That's when we use the Airbnbs when we chat with our family. The next question would be your best Airbnb rental deal to date.
Yeah. It was a BRRRR. If you're not familiar with BRRRR, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. So I have zero money in the deal. Okay. I have a main tenant in the front house, the main house, which is a 2-2. And
Kyle will be back here in a second. It looks like he might have dropped off. He was talking about, here he comes. Yeah, you're back, Kyle. You're
okay,
back
cool.
now. You got the main tenant in the front house and
main tenant in the front house. It's a 2-2. We give them reduced rent. They actually are on-site managers because of that, and they clean the back house whenever there's a turnover for Airbnb. And we rent out that back house, which is a small 2-1, like 700 square feet, for close to $90 to $100 a night. And we'll net on that property usually over $2,000 a month for a place that I have no money in the deal.
That's incredible. So, and you own the property?
Own the property, and just refinanced it, and we have basically $95,000 of equity in it.
Got it. So you had bought it, fixed it up, whatever, got it all prepared for Airbnb, refinanced it back out, and then the tenant in the front is doing the management for the back, and that's incredible. And you're making over $2,000 a month. Love that. Love that. 2 more questions. What are you curious about right now?
Honestly, how to save money on taxes. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, that literally, before you and I met just this last week, I was doing a lot of research and like trying to figure out, okay, because it's tax season. It's right now February, and I'm like, what are my taxes going to look like this year? How do I save for next year? And so that's something that I'm trying to educate myself more on.
Yeah, we're in California, the front lines of ways to be creative and legal with tax deferral and tax optimization. Last question, Kyle. After all your success as a Airbnb owner, renter, coach, how do you stay centered in your values, and how do you stay encouraged to charge forward to reach new goals?
That was a big question that when COVID happened, really like got me back to my why. And I would say, you know, as entrepreneurs, we're always so competitive, right? At least the majority of us are. And we want to push. We want to compare ourselves to other people. And we see, oh, okay, this person has 50 units. I only have 20. And at the end of the day, I just had to recenter myself of what do I want my lifestyle to look like? And I need to create a business based around that lifestyle. And so for me, the motivating fact every day is, yes, it's growth, but it's also how do I automate this and how do I make this business grow even when I'm on vacation or I'm not by my phone or God forbid anything ever happened to me. That's more the motivating factor, is making sure that this business and the people around me are set if I'm not working the business or if, again, something happens to me.
Yeah, very well said. And for our listeners who want to get in touch with you, Kyle, what's the best place for them to find you?
fearlesskyle.com, or you can get me on Instagram at fearlesskyle.
Beautiful, Kyle. Hey, I want to thank you for being on the show. I want to thank you for sharing part of your story. So much wisdom, I think really blowing our audience's mind here with something I think is truly unique inside of the niche of the Airbnb rental business. I want to encourage you to keep being a great communicator, being a person who's going to connect with people well, and then coach people as you're doing and continue to make a difference in this world. With that being said, thank you to our audience for listening to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions Podcast. As always, we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy, such as the Deferred Sales Trust, to exit your business or real estate, or hiring a coach and doing some Airbnb business with Kyle Stanley is the best way for you to grow your wealth. With that, please rate, review, and subscribe. We appreciate you. Please share this with somebody who could be of help. And we so appreciate everybody tuning